Hey friends, so my wife just took my son out for a walk. I just had a shower. I'm fresh. I have some free time and I can do whatever I want. And I want to do some work. And what is work, right? I have so many different things I could be doing. I could be working to publish the EPUB format of Introspect, which a bunch of people have been asking me for. I could be working on my next Substack essay, which I have dozens and dozens of drafts for. I could be cleaning out my notes, which is what I felt like doing. And I was going through my notes and I found an old one that says, "When I publish, I happy. When I don't publish, I no happy." Right. So just a really simple reminder from my past self about my motivations and how I work and how I feel, how I am. Right. And I've debated with myself internally about whether that is negotiable. Like, it doesn't seem like a good way to. At from one perspective, it doesn't seem like a good way to live your life. And I think Naval might have a quote that's something like, desire is a contract you make with yourself to remain unhappy until you get what you want. And yeah, like, why do I allow myself, if we assume in the frame that I'm doing this to myself, why do I allow myself to be unhappy if I haven't published stuff? And yet, at other times, it feels like I don't have much of a choice in the matter, and that's just the way I am. And if I'm hungry, I'm not happy, and when I eat, I'm happy. Right? If I'm sleep deprived, I'm not happy, and when I sleep, I'm happy. If I haven't moved my body in a long time, I get unhappy. And so there are things. This goes back to like the serenity prayer, right? Like, there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't. And then there's things in the middle which is kind of murky because it's not clear. So I just wanted to remind myself that I can make videos. And it's funny because there was a period of time where I used to make videos with a much higher production quality than this. So I have a nice camera somewhere, and I had a setup with my MacBook with OBS and with Sony imaging software connecting the camera to the laptop. And I think when Mac OS updated, that stopped working for some reason, and I got frustrated and I couldn't figure it out, and I just stopped doing that. And it's so funny to me that you can, and this plays out in a lot of domains, but let me just finish this thought. It's so funny to me that I can get good at doing something and then just lose it. And that has been true for like music practice, it's been true for fitness, uh, it's been true for writing, it's been true for hanging out with friends. Just anything that I know that is good for me and I have experience that it's good for me is insufficient by itself to be self-sustaining. Right? It's a whole separate effort somehow to do the thing that is good. I used to do breath work regularly every morning. I'd wake up and be like, and I repeat that like until I felt good. And I wake up, kind of shitty, and then I would do that, and I would do like a box breathing, counts of four. Started out following the four count, and then after that, I kind of once you get the hang of it, you kind of improvise, and it was really good for me. I felt good, and then at some point, I just stopped doing it, and I don't really have a good reason. Things just decay. Like things fall apart. It's the natural nature of things. It's natural for things to fall apart. It's natural for entropy to creep in, and dust accumulates in after you've cleaned up, and it just takes sustained effort to maintain even a superior position, unless you have a position that's so vastly superior that even then I wouldn't be surprised if there are instances where people have done something that's like 10 times more valuable, but then they go back to their old pattern because it's just familiar. And what I learned like a decade, it took me over a decade to get around to realizing slash learning that if you beat yourself up about that, you make the whole thing worse. So even when you fail, you're gonna be like, well, you know, I gotta try again. I gotta slow down. I gotta find the intervention points, and I gotta do better. It would be nice if I did, but I'm not gonna beat myself up if I don't. And that's very tricky. It's very tricky to not beat yourself up. And once you beat yourself up, then there's like a resistance that pushes back against it, and that makes everything less likely again. Stretching is another thing. For a period of time, I was very stiff everywhere, and then I did a whole bunch of stretching and felt a lot better, and then I stopped. I think roughly when I had a child, and then now I'm kind of stiff again, and I've been starting to stretch again. And that's just life. It's full of cycles. Like you can't be mad at yourself about it. But the question is, how do you get better, right? And even getting better is a process that you start out being bad at and have to get better at and can't beat yourself up about. You know what I mean? It's recursive all the way through. And I'm currently working on an essay. I'm always working on like a dozen essays. But one of the essays I'm working on is about it's about essays. It's braided loops, and it's an essay about my writing process. Or okay, everything is about my writing process. I know how this sounds at this point. Like I feel like a caricature of myself, but it's true. Everything is about my writing process one way or another, and I can laugh at it and kind of like make a comedic thing about it, but I can also get really solemn and serious about it and be like, well, living is a creative act. In any given moment, to decide who you want to become, that is creativity. As long as you're not doing the exact same thing that you've always been doing, there is a creative energy involved. There are creative decisions to be made, and it makes sense that a person would use metaphors from the domain which is like highest bandwidth for them. Use metaphors from the domain which is most familiar to them, right? Like so a chess grandmaster would likely think of a lot of things in terms of chess. I've been playing more chess for fun. I suck at it, but I've been starting to think more in terms of chess. Like, oh, some things you gotta fork the thing. Some things you gotta have like a revealed check. Some things you gotta position your pieces properly. And like, so for me, writing is the thing that I have the most experience doing, and so it should be no surprise to me, and no, not just no surprise. I should not be ashamed. I have no reason to be ashamed of the fact that everything comes back to writing for me, and it really I internalized at some point this idea that being repetitive is bad, and I think that's one of the things that costs me a lot in life. Like I worry about repeating myself and embarrassing myself by repeating myself, or by like looking like a hack for repeating myself. But we brush our teeth every day, right? We eat, sleep every day. Why not? What's so wrong with a writer writing about writing fairly often? I mean, it would be good to write about other things, but if I wrote about nothing but writing for the rest of my life, that can be a decent life. It doesn't need to be a bad life. As long as I'm always weaving in other things, which I do. Anytime I talk about something, I can't help but weave in other things. So there's a frame shift here that I'm conceiving of that I haven't implemented. Like I just know that when I do it, it's gonna like really kind of punch me in the heart. Not just like punch through. I can feel it like kind of like there's a bunch of blockage, and it's around here. It's funny. I really get a clearer sense of how emotions are held in the body. And yeah, like there is this thing of Visa is afraid to repeat himself because it would be embarrassing or hacky, and as a result he holds a lot of things in himself hostage, and as a result he is unhappy to some degree, right? And now as I say that, I'm like, well, this quality of unhappiness in contrast with like so much of my previous lives is such a pleasure to have, right? Like every one of my younger selves would be like, God, I wish I had your problems. And that's progress against a spiral, right? And I am grateful for this particular problem. um I don't think I felt that before I started making this video. I don't think I felt grateful for having the problem of dealing with repetition and reconceptualizing my relationship with repetition, with what is it about repetition again? With being a hack. What is that about even, right? It's it's some shadow of a it's a little, it's like a hallucination. It's an echo, it's a fragment, a glitch of the past, of like childhood friends, people that I grew up with, who were also who also wanted to be creative. And I know that many of them no longer work as creatives. I mean, they might, I don't know what they do anymore. I don't keep in touch with a lot of them, but like I am one of the very small handful, if any. I'm tempted to say I'm the only one, but there might be others. I don't know. But like very few of us went on to be creatives in life, like make a living writing or making videos or whatever. And so, wow, I've been holding myself hostage with the thoughts of unserious players. It feels silly, but no, it doesn't feel silly. It seems silly intellectually, but it doesn't feel silly. It feels sad. And I know I'm not, like, I want to say that I'm done, but I'm not done. Like processing. Like it'll take a while. It'll take a while to. And I have a post. Somebody once asked, "What does it mean to process an experience? What do people mean when they say that?" And the story that I told, I guess, was it's not the experience itself, it's what that experience means for everything else that you think you know. So I used to identify as skinny, had long skinny legs, and I used to think I will never be strong. I'll never be like and I'm not yet as where I would like to be, and that we never are. But there are thresholds that you cross, and you can say, "Huh, I crossed that threshold." I was once wearing a size S, and then an M, and then an L, and now an XL. Do I look like an XL? Not really, but I'm tall anyway. um, I did not believe that I could squat more than my body weight, and I did eventually in like 2015 or so. And when I did that, I went down, I came back up, and I'm like, wow, I thought I couldn't do it, and I've done it. What else have I thought that I can't do that I'm wrong about? That I might not be able to do in the moment, but I will be able to do eventually with practice and improvement. And what are the things that I think I can do eventually that maybe I actually can't? There's all these things that, like, what do you really know? Um, and so I took a while to process that experience. The actual joy of lifting, great, but like to sit down and evaluate all of the things, and you think you've evaluated everything, but then you bump up into something else later on that you hadn't considered prior. And so similarly, like processing this experience of, oh, I've been holding myself hostage from the utterances of unserious players who were never gonna, you know, do anything more than be like tourists in the realm of making stuff, were never committed to the long game. They were just play acting as teenagers, right? Which is fine. I don't judge them for it. I don't hate them for it. They did what felt right to them in those circumstances. Uh, but yeah, again, like children can be so cruel without meaning to be, right? Like, or maybe they mean to be, but they don't have the greater context. Like if you tell a kid, you say something mean to another kid, they might carry that with them for the rest of their lives. The kid might say, "I don't care," and but do they? You get what I'm saying? It's like they don't care within their current frame of what they think rest of the life is, and it might take a decade of experience before you realize, oh, like that's so much more than I thought, right? So like, yeah, kids are very grandiose. Everything's terrible, everything's amazing, and it takes life experience to, even if you've read. So I read a lot as a kid, so I was always kind of history brained. And even when the pandemic was happening, I was like, well, it's not the Black Death, like things were worse. And that doesn't that people don't enjoy. There's a Calvin and Hobbes comic which is like, people don't enjoy us big people, big picture people. I think he asked his teacher something like, since we're all gonna die, what's the point of doing math? It's a valid question, and one that a busy teacher, underpaid, might not feel like they want to answer in that moment. They might not even want to think about it, or if they do want to think about it, they might not have the room in the space in their classroom to deal with that in that moment, especially when the kid's being a smart ass, right? So it's messy stuff. Life is hard. Um, But yeah, I'm just making this video because I can, and I wanted to remind myself that I can make videos and that they can be interesting and fun and entertaining. And even if they're not, you know, I'm when I publish, I'm happy, and when I don't publish, I'm not happy. So this is me, you know, making myself happy. I would have been happy even if I just didn't have any kind of emotional breakthrough or anything whatsoever. I remember it's funny. Someone said to me on Twitter, "Visa, it seems like you talk about having breakthroughs all the time. Like, do you really have so many breakthroughs, or is it the illusion of or something?" And my definition is a breakthrough doesn't have to be like, you know, world changing. It just needs to be literally the definition of a breakthrough is there was something that you couldn't pass and now you can. Right? So if you can do something that you couldn't do before, that's a breakthrough. If you can feel something you couldn't feel before, if you can think something you couldn't think before. And the thing is sometimes you had a breakthrough in the past and then you regress and you recede back. Then you have another breakthrough past the same a breakthrough that you've had before. I think it's still a breakthrough, you know. But again, it's like the question is every definition has to serve some purpose, right? Because again, like all definitions are simplifications of reality. So what is the definition doing for you? Like, is it helping you? Is it just making you feel better, feel worse, and feel better not just like superficially, but like in a thorough sense. Anyway, I've gotten the satisfaction I wanted to get out of making this video, so I'm going to end this here. Let me know if you have any questions, any thoughts, and I would love to hear your experiences of like past thoughts or feelings that you've kind of been in the thrall of, you know, like being cowering from this phantom from your childhood or your teenhood or your ex-girlfriend or your mom. Tell me. Tell me about it. Hope you're well. Done.